Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. This is episode number 36, part 2 of 2 with Mandy Bujold, Canadian Olympic boxer. Episode 1, we talked about her path and her day and how Rio went. Now, episode 2, we get into a little bit more of the sports stuff. So, we're going to talk about youth taking up boxing, concussions. We all know, hot button topic in sport in general. What about females in her sport and in leadership? We get into a great conversation around that. What about life after boxing for her? Coaching, planning. How does she do all of that? And finally, we end with advice for future Olympians or best piece of advice she's received. Talk about controlling the controllables, or anyone in sport understands that that's really, really a critical piece. So without further delay, here we go with Mandy.
Welcome to the Green Effect Podcast. Finance, life, business, and everything in between. And now, your host, Stephen Green.
Are there a lot of youth taking up boxing in some way, shape, or form?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of youth in the gym. There's a lot of women in the gym that, there wasn't when I was kind of starting out. So you're definitely seeing a surge of people using boxing as a fitness tool, as a way to kind of get in shape, cross-training.
As I was thinking, in one way, shape, or form, right? So,
a lot of hockey players in the summer will be in the gym, using that as a way to stay fit. Definitely a lot of people using it to stay fit. There's not as many taking that jump to actually competing with it. Mm-hmm. Why? I'm not sure. I mean, we were actually talking about this as well last week, trying to figure out ways to kind of help promote that side of the sport. But I think it goes in waves. I mean, I think this is just in Canada. I think it's very different, in the US or in Europe. I think there's a surge of young girls for sure, getting involved in sport and taking it to a competitive level.
That's awesome.
But in Canada, for some reason, we haven't really seen that growth yet.
Is concussions an issue?
I think the idea of concussions, or the idea that that's such a hot topic, is an issue. But what I know is that, that gives boxing a bad rep. And I think people automatically assume that because we're a contact sport, that concussions is a big issue in our sport. And I'm not saying it's not an issue at all, but it's definitely nowhere near an issue as it is for, other sports, even
football and soccer.
Yeah,
even,
football,
right?
Soccer, running, diving. I mean, anything, swimming, if you actually look at a list of number of concussions in that sport, boxing is actually at the bottom. And that's because we're prepared for what's coming at us, right? When you get in the ring, there's, the person's going to be throwing a left or right. And as long as you can see that punch coming, you can deflect the power to that punch. So the amount of times you're actually taking a really clean punch without seeing it or feeling it first is very, very rare, right? Concussions usually coming from a surprise hit to the back, to the head, or whatever that might be. So I think a lot of people also don't understand, I think, the difference. They see a Rocky movie and they, and then unfortunately those movies don't paint a great picture for boxing. And it's...
Well, even pro men's boxing has taken a hit. I mean, there's also UFC and that sort of thing. So I know that's taken a piece of the pie, but it does get that, right? Yeah.
So, and it's just kind of understanding the differences too, right? Between amateur and pro, and the safety precautions that we take, and that it's 3 rounds. It's the gloves are made differently. There's a lot more padding on the front of the gloves. The officials are there to actually be able to stop and give standing 8 counts before someone gets hurt. We're not prize fighters. We're not trying to make it entertaining for the crowd to get someone, when someone's hurt, and let them get knocked out. That does not happen in amateur boxing. So
funny you say that, because I totally creeped you on YouTube because I wanted to see what it all looked like, and there wasn't. You're right. There wasn't as many shots to the head as I thought there would be, because, listen, I'm your typical, everyday person where that's kind of what I pictured it as, right?
Yeah,
so, you're
absolutely.
right. It's a little more, it's just not as bad as I thought it was, put it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely the finesse, and it's all about, for us, it's almost a point system, right? So you want to hit, not get hit. So it's really fast paced. It's really quick. The speed, footwork, yeah. So it's definitely not sitting there trying to you don't have time to 3 rounds. It needs to be really quick, and you're not loading up on punches.
Volleyball actually has a huge concussion issue. We've had athletes' careers done over
really?
concussion. Yeah, it's. I think it's one of those things where kids are bigger, faster, stronger. The ball just goes a heck of a lot faster. And listen, if you're
Are they hitting into each other? Is that what happened? Or the ball hits?
Balls off the head.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, if you're playing defense, and it's sad because sometimes you see stuff on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and it's like this funny video of someone taking it off the head, and I'm sure that's probably worse than a boxer's hit. Like, it's gotta be, because
the velocity, yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's physics or whatever it is. So ball's coming fast, you're not moving, something's got to take the hit, right? So I actually 2 years ago when I was coaching the 15s with my old club, we sadly we had 10 kids on the team, and at one point we had what we called concussion club.
Oh no.
Were kids that were past the first stage, so they were allowed to come back to the gym, but we had 4 kids on the bench just sitting there in concussion club because they couldn't play, right?
Oh my goodness.
So it becomes an issue, and so anyway, and of course everyone's talking about it. NFL obviously gives it a really bad rap, and it is what it is, right? So
Yeah.
but I'm glad that there's people getting into it, though. I mean, and I think with youth too. I mean, listen, my son's 19, and he's got kind of a sore back a little bit, and he's not really an athletic kid at all. But kids these days are like this all the time, playing their games or on their phone or whatever. So I'm glad there's something that kids are getting into, right? So, and you're a big part of that. I mean, listen, it's if you're having success like that, and you're talking about the sport, that's awesome. So, okay, so LTAD, long-term athlete development. And I was saying before the show, I said sometimes in volleyball we refer to LTAD as almost like a person, right? LTAD said this, LTAD said that, but is long-term athlete development program, for people who don't know what that is that something that is into your sport? Are you guys seeing that?
We definitely use it. It's part of our training programs. Like I'm a level 3 coach. I'm also like a 1-star coach. So when you go through your levels as a coach, it's definitely something that you have to kind of learn and implement and understand the concept of. But I wouldn't say that we focus too much on it. Like we have it, we know it's there. We definitely use periodization programs. When you make the national team, it's part of the requirement that your coach has to make a periodization for your training for that year. But it's tough for boxing because things change all the time. Like we don't really have it's not like World Cups where they're happening at the same time every year, and like our tournaments kind of come and then all of a sudden, oh no, it's not happening anymore, or it's got canceled, so it's really hard to focus on. One of the things I think that we're starting to do a little bit more, or doing better now, is kind of at the end of that cycle, of an athlete's cycle, and being able to keep them involved in sport. One of our new assistant coaches in the national team is actually one of my former teammates, Samir Almais. He was on the men's side, heavyweight boxer, and he's now at the training center in Montreal. So I like seeing that type of thing. That's definitely something that I think about post career, that I'd like to be more involved. I wish the center wasn't in Montreal. If it was in Toronto or something, I feel like I would love to be able to coach at that level and help the program, because I feel like I really would have a lot to bring to the program. But yeah, I think that's a big thing, is once the athlete's done their career, like how do we keep them involved? How do we kind of find a spot for them so that we don't lose them to other things? Yeah,
and I think that's so Ontario Volleyball has their slogan, or whatever it is volleyball for life, right? And it's how do you keep them into it? How do you, and of course there's a lot of focus on coaching and doing the right thing for the athletes. So it's it's a big topic, right?
Yeah,
because you want, listen, if you're going to do the great things that you're going to do, you want that legacy to kind of live on and have the youth that you're working with, you want to have them stay in the sport. And I say that to my athletes right now, and we'll talk about this briefly. Listen, I'm a middle-aged male, okay? So every bias that comes with it, I'm sure I'm part of it, but it's tough to it's correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of high-profile female role models for athletes, and I think that's tough. Again, I'm a middle-aged male coaching young female athletes. It's tough to have those role models. And I think there's a lot of great things being done. I know NCAA volleyball, for example, in Div 1, there's a lot of female coaches coming through, and they're getting those jobs, which is fantastic. But, I think when you do what you do, you will become that female role model, right? Like for your sport right now, who are the role models that they have right now? Like, do you have female coaches coming through? Is that something you're going to do later on?
Yeah, there are a few female coaches. Actually, one of them traveled with us recently to Hungary. Jill Perry, she's from Ottawa. She was a former national team athlete. There's another one in Montreal, Danielle Bouchard, who actually was in my corner at the Olympics as well. So I think I definitely think that's important. One of my Rio teammates is into the coaching stream as well. Ariane Fortin, she's retired. So there are a few. I think there's definitely more kind of at the club level, like in gyms for sure. But taking it to that next level, you need experience, and you need people to be able to trust you. So I'm all about like pushing to have female coaching present at different events. It's something that, as an athletes rep, I've been pushing our organization on for a long time, especially with our younger athletes. I think there needs to be a female there and traveling with the teams and just to make them feel comfortable. And I just think it's a great way to kind of keep them involved. So it's definitely something I would be interested in being more involved in. Again, I wouldn't be moving to Montreal to take a job in that, but if
beautiful city as it is,
if they want to send me to a few tournaments or things like that here and there, or come in for training camps, I would definitely consider that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good. I tell the athletes that I coach, give back, and I had some amazing coaches when I was younger, and they gave up their time and they did things, and because of them, they never asked me to give back. It was something I loved, and that whole volleyball for life sort of thing. And so now when I'm coaching my athletes, I'm like, you guys give back. I run some of the youth programs with our club where it's the 4 to 9 year olds, and I say, get out here and coach. Like, if I'm giving up all my time, you start giving up your time later on, because I did that for you, right? So
that's I think that's the one thing about sport that's nice. I think that people usually get that, right? And I think it helps create good citizens later, right? So
absolutely. I was talking to a friend of mine who does hiring. So he owns a company, and he said with his company, as much as possible, and we're talking 10, 15 people, so we're talking a major corporation, but he said he prefers to hire, it's a sales company, he prefers to hire former athletes, because he said, I'm in sales, they get it, I'm driven. If they played some sort of sport at a competitive level, or they play a sport at a competitive level, that's what I want. I don't, and again, it's a sales job, there's responsibility, stuff like that, but he's like, that's what I want. I want those behaviors, right? I had one of my former athletes message me, and just out of the blue, she's like, you know what? I now realize I'm an adult. Now that I'm an adult, I realize some of the stuff that you were harping on us for. Yeah. And she said, thank you. She goes, I didn't, now I get it. And I'm like, it only took 10 years. Yeah. Nice. But awesome. That's great. Right. So.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of skills and attributes I think that athletes can bring to the table in kind of a next career beyond sport. For sure. And I've had a lot of people actually reach out to me offering jobs, like, hey, awesome. If you're looking for a job, which I take it as a compliment. I think it's cool, and it's something that beyond this Olympics I will definitely consider.
That's fantastic. Okay, so on that note, let's just keep going here. Life after sport. So I know you're doing, are you doing part-time courses at Waterloo?
Not right now. No, I was.
'Cause your focus is like Tokyo right now,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah.
with the new family and everything, it's it's a little hard to really fit anything else
Those
into
kids
my
are
schedule.
cute, but they're expensive and
Yeah.
they suck your time, eh?
They totally do. No, but it's awesome right now. So no, I don't have time right now. And I kind of got to a point where I was taking courses and, you know, part-time for so long. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sick of being at school. I love learning, but I was kind of like, okay, I need to just like take a break here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't even know if I'll go back to it, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure right now. I think there's so many things I want to do. I started this charity, Champions for Charity. I'm taking a break doing it this year just because of obviously the Olympics and the lack of time, but that's something that I want to continue to build on and continue to work with. This year, because I'm not doing one, I'm actually kind of mentoring an organization out in Fredericton, New Brunswick. They're going to be hosting one, and it's going to be called Champions for Change. So it's kind of like an arm from my event. Nice. So that type of thing. I still want to be involved with the youth. I'm definitely like the marketing branding side of things. That's something that I feel like I've been good at in my career, understand really well. So it's kind of nice right now, actually, with the RBC Olympians program. I'm actually on that team.
Nice.
So it is a 2-year contract, so I'll have one more year of that after I'm done this Olympics. So I think I'm hoping that can kind of help me and kind of guide me a little bit in where I want to go beyond sport. But I do feel like I want to kind of be in that field. I love like the sponsorship,
The business side of it.
Yeah. That's stuff to me is like really fun and it's motivating. So I think there's a lot of things I want to explore. I definitely want to continue to do a lot of public speaking for organizations. I'm actually, me and my sports psychologist Kim Dawson, we've come up with some like plans on teaming up and actually going into organizations and running different events that we could like kind of team building events for staff and that type of thing. So we've done a few already and we've had really great feedback. So that's something we want to explore. But yeah, like I said, I think I have an entrepreneurial mindset, and I think I'm always going to have new ideas and things that I want to do. So I'm excited to keep exploring that. And yeah.
It sounds a lot like me. Like it's, I went to, listen, I don't know if this is going to shoot me in the foot or not, but I went to university for 3 months and dropped out, and, started working in the bank when I was 18. Yeah. And here I am now doing mortgages 23 some odd years later. Right. So it's one of those things where, I joke, people are like, first of all, every time I say I coach volleyball, oh, you're a teacher. No, I'm not a teacher. I'm a university dropout who does banking. And I say, I coach volleyball, but I said, volleyball is my real full-time job, but this thing I do at the bank is the one that pays the bills, right? Yeah. So you can find that in sport.
Yeah.
You can find the stuff you enjoy. So I've been coaching a team within a club for, 2 decades, but now I've branched out and I'm doing my own club because I have that, like you, that entrepreneurial spirit, right? And then of course the job is, it is a sales job doing mortgages. So, again, that gives me my competitive itch there too, right? And then, of course, also pay the bills at the same time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and that's the neat thing with sports. You can find your place, right?
Absolutely.
You can definitely find it. So, and then, I mean, what you've done and what you're going to do, I mean, I know when I was planning this, I'm like, man, I want to, like the next couple of questions, I want to know what she thinks and give me stuff I can even take back to my athletes, right? So, you're full of just great information and knowledge and experience, right? Mm-hmm. So on that note, what advice would you give to any athletes, any sport, that have the dreams of going to the Olympics and representing Canada?
I mean, man, planning's a big thing. I think that people kind of overlook that piece, right? Like we talked about a little bit, focusing on the process and not the outcome. That's something that's really carried me far in my career, right? How am I going to get there? What am I going to do? What do I need to do each and every day? And honestly, just knowing that, success doesn't just happen, and I feel like people just think, they kind of look at you and think, oh, well, yeah, of course you're going to be successful because you've been successful in this. But no, like, you have to work hard and you have to put the time in. And, I see it with even some of the athletes that I just recently traveled with. It's almost like they think it's going to happen just because, they're in the right place at the right time or something, right? And it's like, well, no, like, it's not going to happen unless you're putting the work in and you're, very specific about what you're doing. Even when you go to the gym, like, you could go to the gym and train every day, but if you're not if it's not focused training on exactly what it is, like, what are you working on today? And, I've done it many times too, where I just kind of go to the gym, and sometimes my coach will sit me down and be like, so what's the focus today? Or what are you working on today? And sometimes I don't have an answer for him because I didn't really take, it takes 2 minutes to kind of, before going into the gym, even on the ride there, of, what are 2 or 3 things that I'm just going to focus on? It could be one thing, right? That I'm going to focus on today. What do I want to get out of this session, right?
Or just getting your mind set around what's got to get done today. Yeah.
Exactly. So just making sure that you have good intentions when you're going into that training so that you can actually get something out of it, right? To be able to check that off and say, hey, you know what? I went in there. This was my plan. Was I able to do it? Maybe I was able to do it 2 out of 5 rounds today. Maybe tomorrow I'll be able to do it 3 rounds. It's just, how are you measuring that, and how are you kind of seeing progress as you move closer to your goal? I think, yeah.
And I think tweaking your plan too. So I'm the type of volleyball coach where I'm the planner guy. I'm a firm believer that my job is done in practice. When I get to the game, I really have no outcome other than calling a timeout and a sub. Like, my job is done. If they're not ready, I can do my job at practice. So, but the one saying I heard from actually Lou Lamoriello, former GM of the Leafs, he said, "Yeah, we have a 5-year plan and we change it every other day."
Yeah.
Because you got a plan, you got to stick to it, but you got to tweak too, right?
Absolutely. It's
got to happen. So, but having a plan and knowing where the heck you're going, I think it's important, right?
Yeah.
So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
And I would say focusing on the process and not the outcome. Coming back to that, that was something that I worked with a sports psychologist in town, Neil Whittemire, who's now passed, but that was something that he drilled into me. And it's stuck. One of the other things that he...
Former professor at Waterloo
Yeah.
Laurier? Okay.
Yeah.
I knew Neil, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the other things he used to say was, about what do you have control over, right? Controlling the controllables. All these small little things, and there's just little things that you think about on a regular now, and it's okay, it's just super simple things, but how do you kind of break that down into the situation that you're in right now? Yeah.
And so that becomes a big issue with youth, because you probably run into this. Our club has a policy: don't put anything up on social media. And we talked to the teams about this, where if you read someone's talking smack about you, you can't control that. Worry about what you can control here.
Yeah.
This is how we do things.
Yeah.
I'm sure you run into that as an athlete, where things are written about you and whatever, and you can't control that.
Yeah.
You're probably going to read it because it's going to be thrown at you somehow, but you don't control that.
Yeah.
You can't control the other boxer and what they're doing, the other athlete. You just can't, right?
And it's definitely something that's easier said than done, right? When people
100%.
are focus on the positive and focus on, and it's, people say it all the time, but it takes a lot of mental effort to do that, right? Even just focusing on the process and not the outcome. We're all natural. We're all human. We're all going to all think of winning and losing in every different situation. But what are you doing to control those thoughts, right? For me, when I'm preparing for a fight, and the second a thought like that comes into my mind, I automatically I will deliberately stop and think, no, okay, I know what my plan is against this specific opponent. So I'll fill my mind with these thoughts instead, right? Okay, moving to the right, making sure I'm using my jab, or whatever keywords that I have to tell myself.
Right?
Back
to the process.
Yeah. So I just constantly kind of reminding myself, but that's not to say that my mind doesn't wander there. Of course it does, right? But how do you control it and being able to have the discipline to constantly be on yourself, right? To control those thoughts.
What percentage of your training is what we refer to as mental training, which I know is a whole bunch of different stuff, but what percentage of it is that?
I mean, it's huge. I think, honestly, like, boxing is it's a very physical sport. You need to be, like, in crazy condition.
I was watching, man, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. And there's so much going on when you're in there. Like, even when you actually do it yourself, you're kind of like, oh, okay, there's so much to think about at once. So leading up to the training, I would say it's probably 90% physical, 10% mental. But then when you get to competition, it's flipped. It's 90% mental, because you could be the best shape of your life and you kind of look over to your opponent and, you know, and they do something that intimidates you or makes you feel like, oh, I don't know, like you just doubt everything, right? And there's that quote, like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's very true, right? Everything could be going smooth, and all of a sudden you take a shot that you didn't expect or you didn't think they had or whatever, and it just makes you second guess your plan. And like the person that's able to kind of like, okay, you know, take that but not dwell on it, and like, I mean, this is all happening in seconds, right? But to be able to kind of stick to what you're doing, it takes a lot of mental strength.
Yeah, it sure does. And, you know, and you say that when you walk in, you get into the ring, and the opponent's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, or, you know, they do something or say something or whatever. We had that with a team, 15 years ago, I think it was, and there's another club that we always competed against, and they won every national championship from they were 11 till they were 18. Like, they were just the best probably ever. And we were third in Ontario, they were first, and we'd go into a semifinal match or whatever, and they'd walk in, and we knew we were good, fine, but we would look at them and be like, dude, they know they're going to win.
Yeah.
They're walking in, they're like, this is another day at the office, and we're like, okay, crap, where's the scouting report? But they're just like, been here before. They knew, and you look at them and we're like, damn.
Just even the confidence and the way they carry themselves, and and the fact that they're able to do that so well that you guys even think they're going to win now puts doubt in your mind, right? Yeah. So like that's huge, right? How do you do, and that's something that I work on a lot, which is actually kind of funny. At the last Canadian qualifier, there was a girl in the gloving room. So you kind of come up right before the fight. You're in this gloving room, and it's just basically you, your opponent, and the coaches. But you have to wait in that waiting area to be able to be called out to the ring. Yeah. And I didn't even really pay attention to her. She was putting tape on our gloves. But she said she was watching my like mental game before, and she came up to me and like commented on it after, because you know, it's a small space, but she's like, you took up the entire space. Like, your opponent was just sitting there, and you could tell they were scared before even getting into the ring. And she's like, I haven't seen that in years, but it's kind of funny because I was doing it purposely, but I'm not really overthinking it. It just kind of happens naturally. And for her to notice kind of watching from the outside was kind of funny, just to hear her feedback of like, oh God, like I was intimidated.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was kind of funny.
That's a skill. That's a skill you didn't work on, but that's awesome. My athletes have said that about me too, where I can't hide my emotion. You will know exactly how I feel. Just look at me, you'll know. And when I'm on the sidelines coaching, they've said this before, we'd walk into practice and you're there and we're looking at you and we're like, it's either this is going to be a great practice or this is going to suck. Something's going to go wrong tonight. And I'm just so horrible at that. And so, you know, if I get intimidated or if I feel really confident, it shows. I can't hide an emotion if I try. My wife knows that too, right? I can't lie to anyone because she's just like, I know you're lying. Just stares me down. She's like, I know you're lying. I'm like,
you gotta work on your poker face.
Oh my God. Epic fail on the poker face. Okay, so where are you now? So have you qualified for Tokyo yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay. So what is the qualification process at this point then? Because you're winning all these competitions. You just got a gold medal in Hungary, right?
Bronze in Hungary.
Bronze. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you're up there. What's next?
Right now is actually the training starting for the qualifiers. So the very first qualifier is happening in Argentina, March 26th. To April 3rd, I believe, are the exact dates. So
are you the top Canadian boxer right now then?
Yeah.
Okay. And
so
how many Canadians go to this?
So the Canadians will send a full team, so one person per division.
Got it.
And you have to go to this event. And then there's a few different, so I have to place top 4 in my weight class. So there's a few weight classes that have only 3 spots at this event, but my weight class has 4. So as long as I make the semis, I'm qualified, which is double what they had last time. Like last time I had to place top 2. So yeah, there's only 4 spots for our continent. Something doesn't happen at this qualifier. There's one more qualifier in Paris. I think that's the one's in May. I haven't really paid attention to the dates because I'm hoping I don't have to go to that one. But yeah, there's that kind of last chance, and I think there's 5 spots available for the world at that one.
Okay.
But yeah.
So where are you ranked right now in the world?
We don't really have a proper ranking system right now.
See, so you should have just said there was like, dude, number 1 right here.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, like I'm just kind of coming back into international competition after having my baby, and I've seen some old ones, and like I'm still ranked like number 7, which I'm like, well, I mean, I'll take it, but I don't know, right? Like we haven't really kept up on it. Like they haven't really come up with a really good system to be able to score. And yeah, like we have a lot of issues with our sport organization, like international levels. So our boxing is actually being run at the Olympic Games by this subcommittee that was created, headed by like Gymnastics Canada. It's not even being run by our organization because they've been stripped of the rights.
Is that good or bad though? Good or bad that gymnastics is now helping?
Well, I think it's good because they're kind of like a fresh eyes, and like they're trying to make some changes on like to make sure that there's no corruption between like the judging and that type of things that happen. It's a judge sport, right? So there's always going to be some of that. So I think they're making some good moves. So far, I agree with a lot of things that they've done. They've increased the number of women. There's going to be 100 women at this Olympics, whereas the last time I think there was 36. There was 12 girls in each weight class.
Fantastic.
So they've added 2 weight classes. So they're doing a lot of good things, I think, for the sport. But yeah, again, I don't know how they're going to manage any of like the judging and all of that. It's kind of, no one really knows what's happening right now because it's kind of happening as we speak. They're coming up with those plans.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it is tough when it's judged.
Yes.
And I mean, figure skating has obviously been the problem kid in the sandbox when we talk about judging, but that's definitely a tougher one. So. Now listen, so just piece of advice for you when you go to Tokyo. Yeah. Just watch some of the food.
Yeah.
You may want to stay off some of the sushi because it's raw and
no sushi
great
for
food.
Me.
Mandy, thanks so much for coming on. I know you've got a crazy training schedule. I know you're traveling, you have family, the whole bit. And I've been excited to have you on because obviously my real full-time job that doesn't pay the bills is volleyball, and I love talking to athletes who are going through the process and they're training for their dream. And it's just, I've been excited to have you on. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been great.
Thanks for having me.
Now, how can people reach you? So obviously not to call and say, hey, how are you? But you're on social media, right? So what's your Instagram handle? Do you know?
Yeah, it's just Mandy Bujold, MandyBujold. So
Facebook, same thing?
Yeah, all of my social media is just my name. And then my website, same thing, mandybujold.com. I've actually just recently partnered with Jeff Hicks, who was with the Record for many years. He's now officially a Team Bujold writer. Awesome. So he writes stories for me, and we're trying to publish stories kind of once a week and sharing different things that people, that regular media sometimes doesn't ask about. So kind of sharing different insights, and I think people will think they're kind of fun stories. So
nice.
Yeah.
And that's on your website.
That's
then
on
we
my
can
website.
Get that. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again. Good luck for Tokyo. We'll be watching for you for sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon. And there you go. There's Mandy Bujold, Canadian Olympic boxer. So excited that we had her on. What a great conversation. Hey, thanks for listening to the Green Effect podcast. Don't forget, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, RBC Stephen Green, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Green Effect podcast. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play so you catch the next episode. And don't forget to leave a review. Much appreciated.